And now, before we begin the All Things Oz review of Oz in Comics, we have a very special message from a guest of ours, the creator and author of Ages of Oz. Please welcome Gabriel Gale.
Hello, All Things Oz Museum. Gabriel Gale here. Hello to all the Oz fans that I have met and that I've yet to meet. I can't wait to meet you. Unfortunately, it's not going to be this year. But what I will say is, this has been some year, and this year reminds me of that famous line from The Patchwork Girl of Oz where Dorothy is talking to Ojo, and Dorothy says, "Never give up, Ojo. No one ever knows what's going to happen next." While I'm really upset that we can't be together this year, I want to thank All Things Oz for setting up this video message for me to at least say hi to you all through video. I do know that we will get through this, and we'll be enjoying the museum again soon. We'll be enjoying the art exhibits, the signings, the speakers, the autographing, and we'll be eating together and laughing together again soon. Never give up. I love you all. Thank you, and be safe.
Don't lose your head. To gain a minute, you need your head. Your brains are in it. All Things Oz Museum. Without further ado, the International L. Frank Baum and All Things Oz Historical Foundation presents highlights of Oz in comics. There's a lot of fun things that happen in comics in the world of Oz over the years, and we're going to share some of them with you right here. Oz has always been in comics. Well, not always. I mean, the book came out in 1900 and the comics started in 1904. But there's always been a place in comics and comic strips for the Wizard of Oz and the fanciful tale of Dorothy and her friends, the Scarecrow, the Tin Woodman, the Lion, and the other people that she meets along the way, like the Munchkins and Glinda the Good, and of course the Wicked Witch. There's further adventures too with other characters like the Patchwork Girl and Tick-Tock, Wind-Up Mechanical Man. But right here we're going to focus on the main comic books and comic book creations that have come out. And characters sometimes cross over. Hey look, there's Batman and Iron Man and our Glinda, showing three universes can come together in peace and harmony. Let's start in 1900 with the printing of The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. Lyman Frank Baum finished his manuscript in 1899 and got together with W. W. Denslow to do the illustrations. Then on to 1904, when the first comic came out. It was actually a strip in the newspaper called Queer Visitors from the Marvelous Land of Oz. And this kind of started things going in the Oz comic world. In 1960, there was a book called The Visitors from Oz that came out, and the neat thing about this book was it compiles 11 of the 26 comic strips that had come out previously in newspapers, and it was kind of cool to see those all together. And then in 1962, Tales of the Wizard of Oz, a one-shot from Dell Comics, was released. This is based on the animated television series that ran for several years. That leads us into 1978, and this is one of my favorite years in comics because Marvel and DC got together to do a Wizard of Oz crossover event between the two of them, which was really spectacular. MGM's Marvelous Wizard of Oz and the Marvelous Land of Oz both came out, and these were the first crossover events between Marvel and DC, although people often credit next year's team-up between Superman and Spider-Man. Wizard of Oz had it first, and that happened in 1978. They planned 3 editions of this crossover, and they actually wound up producing 2 of them, so there they are. Adventurers, it's Captain Carrot and his amazing zoo crew in the Oz Wonderland War Trilogy. Captain Carrot and his amazing zoo crew did this crossover event in 1986. This was a lesser-known DC comic title, I'd say. I really enjoy it, by the way. I like Captain Carrot. This comic had the Gnome King trying to take over both Oz and Wonderland by starting a war, and Captain Carrot and his crew had to figure out how to stop them and save both realms, if you will, Oz and Wonderland. We have to take a moment to talk about Eric Shanauer, The Enchanted Apples of Oz, and The Secret Island of Oz. Now, in case you don't know, I am a huge Eric Shanauer fan. I have been for a long time. I actually have the very first comic book that he ever worked on right out of school. The day after graduation, he got his first professional comic assignment, lettering an issue of the comic book Warp, which was published by First Comics. And a few years back, I had the pleasure of having Eric here at the festival, and I cornered him with a bunch of things to sign, and he was gracious with his time and did it. And he actually signed the very first panel that he ever did professionally in my Warp comic book. Fun fact, the Warp comic book was based on the Warp Broadway show, which starred Andre DeShields, who is also now a friend of mine and one of my Broadway heroes. So that was great. Eric's work is amazing in Oz. He does the Marvel Oz series with Scotty Young, and he also does a series called Age of Bronze, which is really spectacular, telling the story of the Trojan War legends. And it's really, really something to see. So check it out if you haven't. You can check out Eric. He co-founded Hungry Tiger Press with his partner David Maxine, and he's an all-around good guy. Love his work, love all of his work, and you should check it out. But start with Enchanted Apples of Oz right here. All right, next up on our comic book adventure is 1991's Oz Squad. This was a trilogy. I don't know why. I didn't care for it myself. I thought the art was a little bit off. I thought the story was a little bit sluggish, and there were 3 of them, and if you like that sort of thing, by golly, Oz Squad is available. And then, 1994 to 2002 was when Bill Bryan had his passion project done. He did Oz. He actually did 3 Oz books. He did Oz, Dark Oz, and Land of Oz. He worked with Assorted writers. He was the illustrator on these. Love all 3 of these books, and there's original artwork, original pages from these books actually on exhibit at the All Things Oz Museum as a part of our collection, which we're very happy to have. Bill Bryan, again, really great guy, was at the festival, took a lot of time with people, drew the entire time he was there, the whole weekend. He was always drawing, sketching, doing something. So check out the Oz, Land of Oz, and Dark Oz series from the late 90s, early 2000s. '98 and '99 saw Peter Pan and the Warlords of Oz. Hand of Doom Comics put this out. It was an interesting story with Peter Pan and, well, the Warlords of Oz. And then 2004 came Dorothy. This was done with a Photoshop type application. It was photo and drawing put together as one. In 2006, Oz the Manga came out. Short on story, but big on art. This series had this look to it, like you see here, and it was really cool to see. And in 2009, of course, Marvel started to do the Wonderful Wizard of Oz. They started to take L. Frank Baum's books and redo them. This is the Scotty Young and Eric Shanauer collaboration from Marvel Comics, and we're excited that it's out there for everybody to see, and I think they're working on another one right now. In 2011, Ethan Tarsish found himself an illustrator, Kelly Brown, and he had this story he wanted to tell about a war brewing in Oz, and here it is, Woe is Oz. This book was popular. It came out, it had good storytelling, good art, hand-drawn art, not computer-generated, and Kelly made it a point when we talked to him recently to let everybody know that he was doing it by hand, and they're getting ready to do a new series, which will also be a lot of hand-drawn art in there, so we're excited about that. They also put out a coloring book, the Woe is Oz coloring book for adults. It's an adult coloring book, lots of detail based on the images from the comics. Okay. I have to back up a year to 2010. A friend of ours, Tommy Kovac, and Andy Hirsch did a comic book series called Royal Historian of Oz. There are 6 in the series. Basically, this guy wants to write an Oz story. He's going to do a new Oz story, and they find out that Oz is a real place. It's a fun adventure series, and I strongly recommend it. That brings us back to 2011 and the beginning of something kind of special, Legend of Oz, The Wicked West. Tom Hutchison is the writer on this from Big Dog Inc. And Big Dog Inc. had some success with their first comic, Critter, which is a superhero comic. And they took on the Oz legend. And Tom talks about that with us in just a few minutes. But a great book, Western retelling of the Oz stories. And it's always wonderful when new issues come out. Full disclosure, I actually wrote the foreword to this graphic novel when the first 6 issues came out as a paperback, a trade paperback. And I wrote the foreword to it. But let's hear my conversation with author and originator of this story, Tom Hutchison. Hey, it's Tom Hutchison. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, of course.
On our little To Oz virtual event. All kinds of fun. So let's start with who you are. So you are the writer for Legend of Oz, The Wicked West.
Yes.
Which is a Western retelling of the Oz stories as we know them.
Correct.
And you run Big Dog Inc. And happy anniversary. This is the 10th anniversary of your first publication, right?
Yeah, 10th anniversary for Big Dog Inc., Critter, and Penny for Your Soul. And actually next year will be the 10th anniversary of The Legend of Oz.
Cool, cool. So yeah, this is the 10th anniversary of the Pop-Tart eating superhero, the second greatest superhero comic book out there, as
Correct.
I recall. And then next year will be the 10th anniversary of Oz.
Yes.
So we're kind of talking today about how Oz has kind of been around in comics for a long time, right?
Oh, yeah.
We can trace it back to 1910. So the book came out in 1900 with the first Oz stories. In 1910, they started doing some comic strips and getting that out. And actually, there were some strips that came in newspapers as early as 1904, kind of to promote other things. But Oz has been around for a while, right? In 1978, DC and Marvel did their first crossover event. Although a lot of comic book fans think it was 79 with Spider-Man and Superman, but it was not. It was Wizard of Oz in 1978. And then you came along and said, superhero comics are nice, but I can do something with this.
Sure.
And what was the draw to Oz? I mean, why, of all the things, of all the lands and fantasies out there, why did Oz kind of speak to you?
I mean, honestly, very random. I mean, I growing up, I mean, I'm almost 50, so I remember the days of the Wizard of Oz being on TV basically once a year, and it was an event. It was special. You know, you ran to your TV and you sat there for 2 hours and you watched the movie. So it was always one of those things for me. Like Wizard of Oz is on, so we have to watch it. So Oz, but that was really my only Oz experience. Like I had not read the books or any of that kind of stuff. So I was basically the movie and then, you know, the sequels and so on. That was my Oz experience. But as I was getting into comics, there was a point I do a lot of shows. And so instead of flying, I drive and I just pack up the van and we go wherever we need to go. So a number of years ago, I had been looking to go get tickets to go see Wicked. And the image of Elphaba with her, you know, with her head down and kind of smiling like this with her hat, you know, I was just being inundated with that. It was just constant. So that image stuck in the back of my head. And at one point when I was driving back from Phoenix Comic-Con, it was, you know, Phoenix and New Mexico, and it was just, you know, Albuquerque and whatever. And it's just desert and tumbleweeds and cactus. And it is the Wild West. And for whatever reason, the image of Elphaba got into my head, and all of the terminology started to blend. She's the Wicked Witch of the West. We have the Wild West, the Wicked Witch of the Wild West. What does all this mean? And I just sat in the van for hours driving and just tinkering with all of these little pieces of items. You know, if we had Dorothy, eventually we got back to the idea of Dorothy. So if Dorothy's going to come to the Wild West, she can't wear ruby slippers. Obviously, that doesn't make any sense. So how do we translate that, you know? And so those became ruby spurs. Obviously, she could probably still have a dog, but she's got to ride a horse. So Toto became the horse. And it just kept steamrolling until it became an actual real concept.
Yeah, the art is spectacular. You work with a number of artists, and we'll talk about how you found them. But the story is compelling too. You've taken the Oz, kind of the legend of Oz that we know, if you will, and you've turned it a little bit sideways and said, what if this happened in the Wild West, right? So there's a Western setting. So we see different characters like the Scarecrow interpreted a little differently for the time, and the Tin Man, and You've got a great cowardly lion. Your lion is spectacular. But you write this, so when you're writing it, are you thinking about the imagery of what it's going to look like on the page when you're writing? Are you focusing on the story? Which comes first, kind of the chicken or the egg in your head?
Yeah, I'm very visual. So before I even started writing a script, I had guys doing character designs for me, and so because I needed to be able to know what Dorothy looked like, I needed to know, what her costume was, how it, spoiler alert, she's got, ruby handled pistols and so on. So I needed to see all of that before I could even really begin to write. Now, the original 6 issues that we did, we've done over 20 now, but the original 6 issues is basically the Wizard of Oz. So it's structured as Dorothy comes to Oz, gets her friends, travels to the wizard, meets the witch, and so on, with all of the little Western twists as we go. But the Scarecrow is a great example of one of the bigger changes, because as opposed to the Scarecrow that we know in almost every incarnation of Oz, who's literally a scarecrow dude with no brain and so on, ours was turned into basically a Native American Indian girl who is mute. So that is sort of the indication of the something's wrong in the head kind of thing, but she's not like we understand in the movie, where he's just goofy and weird. So we wanted to do something with these characters where we kind of take a left turn, but at the same time, the tone and texture of what Baum intended for these characters to be is still built into them.
Right. My favorite, and you and I have discussed this before. Oh, so full disclosure, so those first 6 episodes, or first issues, then went into a trade paperback that I was fortunate enough to write the foreword for that, because it's a great series. So just throw that out there. Full disclosure there, and nobody has to worry about us being buddies. But the Jack Pumpkinhead character, your approach to that, I thought was pretty fantastic, in that you took this character that we all know is, this stick man with a big pumpkin on his head, and you really made it Western appropriate. Talk about that just a little bit, because that's one of my favorite transitions.
Yeah, Jack was another very unique one, because while this Western land of Oz still has all kinds of magic in it, which the original Jack Pumpkinhead is, he's just a magic dude, armature basically. I talked to my designers and I said, yes, we can do it that way with however we want to twist it, but is there a way to take it to another level for what we're doing? And Jen Broomall, who did a good portion of the design work for Oz, came back with the idea of making him a guy, but with a bandana across his face that has the jack-o'-lantern pumpkin design on it. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so good. And he's probably the one character that deviates the most from what he is in the books and the movies and so on, because he is a little bit more of a fleshed out kind of pseudo bounty hunter guy, but he does have a good relationship with Tip right off the bat, which, we won't go into spoilers, but we all know what happens there. So we definitely linked him up with Tip, gave him a backstory with Tip, but he is a little bit more of a more fleshed out, direct connection to Ozma and so on in our story. And he's been insanely popular. So whatever it is that we did with him, it worked, and people really enjoy him.
Agree. And I like that you mentioned Tip, and we're talking about Jack Pumpkinhead, because you brought in a lot of the book characters. I mean, the Colliders are there, TikTok is there, General Ginger, who I didn't expect to pops up. So you've really kind of taken the time to do the research and kind of vet out these characters and bring them into a Western world, which still kind of feels like Oz. It's weird because it's new stories, new adventures, but familiar enough where you get it. And I think anyone can jump in right away and kind of pick it up.
Totally.
And say, I know what's going on.
Anyone who knows Oz well, who has read the books and so on, you're going to be able to come into these books and you're going to get the Baum feeling, which was the point. We didn't want to deviate so hard that it wasn't what was intended from a character standpoint. But those that don't know all of the Oz history, if all you know is the movie or so on, then you're just going to come into a huge adventure story, a little bit of steampunk, a little bit of magic, blended with all of the 14 books that Baum wrote, which was where I went first. When I first had this idea, I was like, okay, I don't want it to be Wicked. I don't want it to be The Wiz. I don't want it to be anything but Baum. And then I'm going to put my twist with the Western stuff on it. And so that's why a lot of the traditionalists that really love Oz, when they finally give it a chance, they come back and they're like, oh, I get it. I see that you really actually, this isn't just a typical fairy tale adaptation where, you know, Cinderella's running around in her underwear or anything. This is a legitimate adaptation of what Baum did, just in a Western setting.
And we've talked about that before too, kind of the touch points, right? So on other panels we've been on, we've talked about the Wicked West kind of appeal, but the look of it is so different and it's so modern, and that people touch it and they're like, oh, Oz, I don't know if I like that. And then they'll see it again, they'll be like, oh, Oz, I should look and see what this is. And then the third time they kind of get it in their hands and they're like, oh, I like this. This is good. So it's good storytelling. I think the storytelling counts, right? Even if you have the nicest pictures in the world, if the story is crap, then it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
So the story counts, and what you've been a master of is really making a story that you can follow beginning to end, that has a purpose.
Sure.
I don't feel like you're ever writing a page just to have a page, just to have an image. It always goes to something. And that's true across all the books that you write, but especially with Oz, it's always relatable. The story is always heading somewhere, and you know you're heading on a path, following the yellow brick road, if you will, that you're going to get to something. There's going to be a payoff.
Sure. And that's by design. I mean, I have this, like I said, we've done 20 some issues of it now. Yeah. I have this plotted into issue 30-ish with a very specific sort of ending in mind. Like I knew when I started, I knew where I was stopping. Now, even when we stop, that doesn't mean that's the end of the book, because Oz as a world is immense and we can spin wherever we want to spin to. But there is a very, very specific point where we're going to reach a moment in my story where things have kind of reached their climax. So it's like we're at peace at this point. People kind of go their own ways, and then we kind of can decide, okay, well, where are we going next? Are we going to follow Tip? Are we going to follow Jack? Are we going to follow Glinda, Ginger, whatever? And then that just opens the doors to more of what our world is.
Sure. And the other thing I kind of like about your world now, as a comic book guy, I like this. So you have a lot of variant covers, right?
Sure.
So you'll do kind of the main story, but then you'll do these different variants. And when you think about Oz books, I think like this is the original Oz thing, was all these variant covers, right? You can get different editions of The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, and you could have 40 editions on your desk and all 40 would be different. So I don't think 40 of anything, but I like that you change it up. You do some specific ones for some events that you go to. You've got some stuff that's really kind of specific to a great example, and a kind of offbeat one was Goth Day in May.
Sure.
So there was this gothic, Dorothy cover that was issued as a variant, which was just fun, but it's fun for collectors too. So outside of just the Oz kind of part of it, it's fun for collectors. And that brings me back to the art. So how do you find these artists? Because a lot of these are very different looks. So like in the museum, we have some Genevieve Brumal. We've got a bunch of the books, but we've got some original Jen Brumal art. But how are you finding these artists, and how do you convince them that they really want to work on a Western Oz book?
It's part luck, especially because when you're considering when we started this book, almost 10 years ago, we were at the beginning of what Big Dog Inc. was. So even then we were like, it's not like anybody knew who we were. Like, oh, I want to go work for Big Dog Inc. Like, who are these guys? So we got lucky with Oz because I had been working with an artist on a different book who was part of a studio. And when I got to the point where I was like, okay, we're ready to do this Oz book, I basically went to the head of the studio and said, okay, I need somebody for this. Who do you have? And they sent me samples, and I was like, okay, that guy, I want that guy 100%. And his name was Allison Borges, and he did the bulk of Oz he did the entire miniseries, and then he did issues 1 through 15 with like 3 issues that he didn't do. So it was the Allison show, and you can really watch him as the story grows. You can watch his art grow as well. It really becomes his book. all the way through issue 15 when he stopped. And then at that point, it was basically the same thing. It was, we have to keep going, so we need another artist. I went back to the same guy and I was like, so we need an artist. Who do you have? And that was where Carlos Reno came in, and he was actually the guy who did the 3 fill-in issues. So we've really only had 2 people draw Oz in 10 years. And with the brand new book that just came out, we were lucky enough to get Carlos back. So he actually did the brand new book that just came out. I don't know if you can see that there. He does the cover, he does the interiors. So we actually have a great artistic continuity for the interiors of the book, which is really the key, because variant covers come and go. We use this guy, we use that guy. Different events require different genres and styles and whatever. But the interiors, the more you can keep that interior consistent, the less jarring it is when an artist leaves, which is inevitable. I mean, they will always leave because there's always Marvel and DC to go work for. But yeah, we've gotten very lucky. And then the from there, it became word of mouth, because we were doing variant covers, and there's people who literally, that's what they do. They just do covers. And so they came to know that that's what we did. And suddenly we were getting contacted. Oh, hey, I saw your thing. I was at a con, and we talked to you there, whatever. How do we do covers? And we just grew the cover art segment while trying to maintain the interiors with these 2 guys as best we could.
That's great. So you've done self-published, and then you joined up with another company for a while and kind of reissued some books. And now you found kind of a new niche, if you will, a new way of doing business for comics that seems to be very successful. And that's doing Kickstarter campaigns. So you're crowdfunding, and you're kind of source funding the books, right? So the fans get in on it right from the beginning. And tell us about kind of how that progressed, and what made you think this is a way I'm going to try, and what's the future for the Wicked West?
Sure. After we had published ourselves for 4 years, and we had kind of felt like we reached a peak, that we couldn't really do more than what we were doing without a little help. And so that's where Aspen Comics came in. They kind of came in, became sort of our umbrella publisher. We published under their name for 3 years, including reprinting the original miniseries for Oz. But those Aspen issues also had new material in them too. So we gave you an extra 6 pages of new material that were, or sort of a backstory for the original 4 witches / peacekeepers of Oz, about 50 years before Dorothy shows up. So there was new material in the Aspen books. But when Aspen got part of their company sold to Hollywood to do movies, we had to figure out, okay, well, how are we taking Big Dog forward again? And the comic book marketplace, the retail comic books, like you think about going like a comic book store or so on, it's a very crowded marketplace. There's tons of publishers, tons of books, and we just weren't in a position to say, okay, we're diving back in. So we wanted to kind of take it slow and sort of rebuild, sort of BDI 2.0. And Kickstarter, for those that don't know, it's called crowdfunding. Basically, it is a website where a creator will present something, whether it's music or a movie or comic book or whatever, and they'll say, look, we want to make this thing. We need so much money in order to make this thing. And what we're asking you to do is pledge for this product. You're not just throwing money at it, you're actually getting something in return. So you would say, hey, I want this cover, and it's going to be $10. And when the campaign is over, they will get the item that they pledged for. And then that money helps fund the entire project. That's basically what Kickstarter is. And so we started doing that in the fall of 2017, I think, with a couple of our other books, just to kind of test the market and see what we were going to get. The response was fantastic. And we started lining up what we wanted to do. We do them basically quarterly so that we don't overwhelm the market. And so we just did this Oz book that I've been showing you. We did this last October. It's a 40-page book. Normally it's 20 pages. So this was a 40-page book that we did that kind of finished up the Oz arc that we were in before Aspen came around. So we wanted to finish that piece of it up. So we did a nice big 40-page book. It is out now to the backers have their books. It is available for sale on our website. We do web sales as well. And Carlos is on board. We are already planning the next arc, which is going to be called The Age of Ozma. That will be coming, like I said, next year is the 10-year anniversary for Oz. So we're going to be doing a large run of Oz through Kickstarter next year with Carlos, with this team, Carlos, Gat Melvin, HDE on letters, and it will pick up right where this leaves off. Everything that we do comes in arcs, kind of like a season for TV. But as we all know, when you get to that last episode of a season, usually there's a cliffhanger that's like, hey, come back next year and, we'll do this again. So that's what we do with our books. We kind of have our arcs, but there's definitely open endings to say, hey, look, 2021, starting in January, we're going to be releasing at least 4 issues next year throughout the year, and maybe more depending on the speed and so on. But that is where we're going, and we're really excited about the 10-year anniversary next year. So we might be doing some extra bonus things like hardcover collections and specialty things that the comic book crowd really likes, but is also great for new buyers, because now they're getting the entire book in one shot versus having to buy all of the the floppy monthly issues.
Yeah, it's great. We're excited about the 10th anniversary. I gotta say, at the Baum House and at All Things Oz, we're excited too. And I just want to say on your Kickstarters too. So Kickstarter, like you said, it's about creators, and sometimes it's an idea, and I need funding to get it started. Your books are pretty much done by the time you go to Kickstarter. The story's written, the art's there. It's going to happen.
Sure. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, in some cases, we're like halfway through. This one took a little longer because, again, it was 40 pages, and you have to have artist schedules and so on. But yeah, there's no. We have funded now, I think, 15 campaigns, something like that. All of them were funded. All of them were shipped out. There is no danger of the book not happening. Obviously, acts of God and COVID slow things down from time to time, but we will always put the book out. We have never missed shipping a book to our backers. Some of that is quality control. We want to make sure the art's right, the color's right. We want to make sure the printer's doing their job right, all that kind of stuff. And so sometimes there are bumps in the road, but we always get the books out, and invariably, once people get them, it's a big excitement thing. They post it on social media. Oh my gosh, mail call. I got Oz from Big Dog Ink today. Here's all my books, the different covers, whatever. And then there's people that, are just there for the reading copy too. They just want to read the book, which is why we have that option too. Some of the variant covers are a little more expensive, $20-$30, very limited. If you just want to read the book, there's usually like a $9 option that includes your shipping and all that kind of stuff. So very easy to get involved in what we do. And if anyone wants to pay attention to Oz next year, 2021 January, we will be launching the next campaign.
There we go. So where can we find you online, Tom?
Yeah, so we're on Facebook, Big Dog Ink with a K, I-N-K. There's a Facebook group. You're welcome to find me there as well. I mean, I have my own personal page, Tom Hutchison. On Twitter and Instagram, it's BDI Comics, and that's our primary focus. Yeah,
great. Well, we look forward to seeing you at Ostravaganza next year. Hopefully, the world is open back up, and we can get you there for the 10th anniversary of Big Dog Ink's Legend of Oz: The Wicked West. And thanks for spending a few minutes talking to us about comics today. Appreciate it.
Of course. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Always good to talk to you, Tom.
Okay, the last of our featured comics is the 2013 Steam Engines of Oz. Steam Engines of Oz is an interesting thing. This was a free comic day event comic. So this was just came out on Free Comic Book Day to start out the series. And this free issue of the comic book now sells for about $99. This came out in May of 2013 and then started the series since then. And there's also an animated series based on the comic that's in the works. And there might even have They might even have started airing episodes at this point, but 2013, Steam Engines of Oz. And then from there, we go on to a lot of visitors from Oz. A lot of people over the years in different comics have been there, whether it's the Fantastic Four, or Supergirl, or Deadpool, or the X-Men. There's been zombies in Oz, the zombie-full world of Oz. Betty and Veronica had a trip to Oz, and a lot of other characters. You can see there's a TARDIS that's gone to Oz. Of course, most recently, Harley Quinn has an Oz Dream episode or issue of her comic. The Disney folks have been to Oz, and there's a new thing that just came out in the last year or so, which is One Direction in the Wizard of Oz. So there's all kinds of Oz out there. And last but not least, we're going to leave you with me being done talking and thanking you for joining us to talk about some Oz comics. And we're going to show you some of the Oz comics and original artwork that's in our collection at the museum. Enjoy!
You got the fabulous wizard, the Wizard of Oz. He'll razzle you and dazzle you from here to the stars. He'll be the first to tell you it's a hoo-wee. So don't go dreamy-eyed and goo-wee in the magical blizzard. You'll be dropping your jaws. You've got the fabulous Wizard of Oz. You're guiding like the fabulous Wizard of Oz. He's out of sight, the fabulous Wizard of Yes, he's the fabulous wizard with the wisdom of Oz. He knows what's going on between the oops and the paws. He's been the wizard since the day he fell from the skies, and he will yank your chain until the day that he dies. But he's there when you need him, so let's give 3 hurrahs. You got the fabulous Wizard of Oz. He can walk that walk. He can talk that talk.
I'm talking Oz talk.
He can dance that dance, be it foxtrot, lindy, or the tango. But don't you squawk that squawk. You're gonna gawk that gawk. When he does the moonwalk, the cakewalk, and he can shuffle off to Chittenango. Chittenang, 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 Chittenango. Fabulous Wizard of Oz. But when our glorious wizard The spectacle's more spectral than all your Mardi Gras. And with his nickel-plated armor so shiny, he's gonna fool the pants right off your high knee. With like a chop to the gizzard, you'll go down on all fours. You got the fabulous Wizard of Oz. He's got your back, the fabulous Wizard of Oz. He's with you, Jack. The wonderful, powerful, thunderful, powerful, outrageous, incredible, contagious, inedible, miraculous, compelling you, spectaculous, I'm telling you, the fabulous Wizard of Oz.